You know that feeling when you're scrolling through endless subwoofer options, trying to convince yourself you won't end up with a piece of equipment that looks great on the shelf but never really moves the room? You've probably already set a budget, measured your space, and wondered if the extra dollars you spend on a premium name actually translate into audible difference in your daily listening. That hesitation is real. No one wants to waste money on a sub that ends up sounding like a muted thump while you're watching a movie or playing your favorite vinyl. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about the REL T/7X, an 8-inch powered sub that's been marketed as a compact, sealed solution for both HiFi stereo rigs and home theater setups. I dug into how people actually use a unit of this size, what the trade-offs are compared with larger ported boxes, and whether the price point makes sense for the kind of listening you do. First off, the T/7X isn't trying to be a massive, floor-standing beast. Its sealed enclosure means the bass it produces is tight, controlled, and fast-acting, exactly the sort of response you want when you're listening to a jazz trio or an acoustic singer-songwriter album where every drum hit should feel articulate rather than boomy. Because it's sealed, the sub doesn't need a port, which eliminates the gurgling noise that some cheaper ported designs can introduce at low volume. In a modest three-way system, say a pair of bookshelf speakers flanked by a small center channel, the T/7X slots in nicely and fills the gap without overwhelming the mids. People who live in apartments or rooms that are around 400 to 800 square feet tend to appreciate that the T/7X can still provide a noticeable extension without the need for a corner-hugging, floor-standing cabinet. I've seen it installed in a home office where a compact desk-mounted speaker system is the primary source for both work calls and evening music. With the sub tucked under the desk, the bass adds a pleasant depth to podcasts and streaming playlists, and you won't notice it vibrating the entire room. If you're the type who watches blockbuster movies with explosive soundtracks, the T/7X can still hold its own, but there are limits. The 8-inch driver, driven by a Class AB amplifier, delivers clean low frequencies up to about 35 Hz, which is great for rumble-free dialogue and subtle impact effects. However, if you regularly crank the volume to fill a large living room with deep, cinematic explosions, think Transformers or Mad Max, you may find yourself reaching for a larger, ported sub to get that visceral thump. In those scenarios, the T/7X might feel a step shy, not because it's a bad unit, but because its design philosophy leans toward precision rather than raw power. One of the biggest practical strengths is the connectivity. The T/7X comes with both RCA inputs and a line-level input that accepts a range of source devices, from a dedicated preamp to a TV or streaming box. That flexibility means you can slot it into a stereo system without having to rewire your entire setup, and you can also integrate it into a surround sound receiver chain with minimal fuss. The volume and crossover controls are on the rear panel, which keeps the front clean and aligns with its minimalist aesthetic. I've watched users place the sub on a low bookshelf, run a single RCA cable from their preamp, and be done within minutes. Design-wise, the high-gloss white finish is more than just a color choice. It can actually blend with modern decor that favors clean lines and bright surfaces. In a living room with white walls and light wood flooring, the sub doesn't scream audio gear the way a matte black box might. That said, the glossy surface does show fingerprints, so you'll need to wipe it occasionally if you have kids or pets that tend to climb on furniture. It's a small maintenance note, but worth mentioning if you value a pristine look. Now, let's talk price versus value. REL is a brand that has built a reputation for high-end subwoofers, and the T/7X reflects that heritage. It sits in a price bracket that's higher than generic budget subs, but you're paying for a well-engineered sealed cabinet, a Class AB amp that runs cooler and more efficiently than a typical Class D unit, and the brand's reputation for matching sub performance to the character of the main speakers. If you already own a pair of high-quality bookshelf speakers from, say, KEF or Bowers & Wilkins, the T/7X can enhance their performance without muddying the soundstage. In that respect, the value comes from synergy. Adding the sub actually makes the whole system sound larger than the sum of its parts. On the flip side, The same price point could buy a larger ported sub with bigger driver size for those who prioritize sheer volume over tightness. So if your priority is maximum SPL for parties or a home theater room that needs to shake the walls, you might feel the T/7X is under-delivering for the cost. Also, because it's a